Hello and welcome to OT, the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. My name is Felix Schultz, and I am with...
None other than Andy Green. How are you, Felix?
I'm really quite excited. Do you know why I'm excited?
I'm going to guess that it's a little bit of fanboying on your part over today's guest.
It really is. I think, so today's guest is Jeremy Kirkland, who is the host of the style podcast Blammo, with an exclamation point, which is in some ways one of the reasons why I thought, well, I don't know, we were having a discussion about what we can do, and I'm like, I love this podcast. This is a great podcast, and part of the reason OT, the podcast, exists is because of Blammo. Is that fair to say, Andy?
Definitely on your part. It's really fascinating because this is one of your favourite podcasts after OT. Mm-hmm. And it's a style podcast, not so much fashion is style, and you're a guy who wears Birkenstocks around the house.
Can I just say, I was perusing Instagram, and some of Australia's hottest style writers and influencers were also wearing Birkenstocks, exactly the same model as mine at the moment. So shut up, Andy Green.
He's came prepared.
Fashion.
He's got receipts. Comes up
no, I mean, the thing I like about Blammo and Kirkland is it's not necessarily, and this is what I like, in general, it's that they're good interviews about people that are interesting in their own rights and, have something to say. It's not like the content, like I don't necessarily care about, repurposed men's fashion from the 80s particularly, but if someone can sell it to me convincingly, I'm on board for an hour of podcasting.
He's a very talented interviewer, and he does a great job at introducing a large audience to someone they might not have ever heard of or thought about in a really interesting way. So I'm excited to talk to him. Before we do that, ride the excitement out with me, Felix. There's been some news of late, a little while ago now. Zenith released a new watch, the Chronomaster Sport 41mm.
Sure. I don't think it's called the 41mm. I think it's called the Chronomaster Sport.
Chronomaster Sport.
Do you say Zenith or Zenith?
No, it's Zenith. I just like saying Zenith.
I was like, that's super weird. I've never heard anyone say Zenith before.
Zenith. We've all been doing it wrong. What do you think of this watch?
It's a nice watch.
I'm overwhelmed with detail.
No. Like, so, I mean, to deal with the, I don't know if it's an elephant or a 10,000-pound gorilla, it's something in the room. It looks a fair bit like the Rolex Daytona.
It does.
And there is some maybe the precedent has been drawn a little bit closer by the fact that for a good long time, the Rolex Daytona used the same movement, the El Primero.
Yes, 1990s sort of period for about 15 years, I think.
And I mean, it's sort of inevitable. Like there's a big black ceramic bezel. The dial is a little bit more Zenith. It's sort of got those classic 3-color counters that are slightly less overlapping than usual. But it does have that sort of sports chrono vibe to it. What do you think about it, Andy, fan of Rolex Green?
Well, it's been called the Rolex Killer. It's not.
It's
not.
It's been called the Rolex Killer by people looking to get
up.
clicks on their articles.
Maybe there's a bit of self-interest in there. It's been very well marketed, I must say. The coordination from Zenith marketing team was pretty impressive. They got a lot of good coverage out of it. I think there's been some really interesting thoughts on it. I think the price is right for what you get. Sort of like 15 grand Aussie.
14,300 on bracelet, to be exact.
Sure, 14,300. Like that's quite a lot of value for the money. A clear case back as well. That great movement. I just feel like as a watch, there's a bit too much going on. Bit too much detail for me. There's sort of from the the 3 different coloured subdials, even to like the finishing on the bracelet and the way they've kind of got all of these different edging on. Like it's a lot of detail for an otherwise simple watch. That said, in the Zenith catalogue, it's definitely one of the better looking pieces I think they've released.
It's interesting.
I don't like it on the bracelet. Like
those polished centerlinks are too much.
It's too much. It's off. It looks really good on the the blue strap that it comes on. I don't know if it's
It's
leather.
like it's Kojura, I think. It's like a strong nylon sort of material.
Yeah, and it comes on a rubber strap as well, I think. Yeah, well, technically rubber on the side. Really looks good on that strap. Bright blue sort of rubber, matches the Subdial 3. What else?
I think so Blake Butner from Warner Mound popped up a pic on NATO, and I think that looked really good too. I think generally, like my sort of take on it, like, it's a nice watch, it's commercial, it will sell, I think, and it's what Zenith need. Like, I think they've grabbed people's attention with the Defy a few years ago, and I think that's done well for them, sort of moving into the consideration set that they wouldn't normally have been in. Like you see on forums and Facebook guys, should I get this Omega? Should I get this Rolex? Or should I get the Zenith Defy? That's sort of a bit of a new thing for them, and I think this is them capitalising on that and
Side
playing
note.
it a bit. Yeah, go.
I have to mention it while we're talking about Defies. Chris, the dial artist, one of our first ever guests. I think our first ever guest.
Oh yeah.
He painted up a Zenith Defy and it looks incredible. I don't know if it's for him. I don't know if he's auctioning it off.
Or
but
from
it
Bamford, I thought maybe, because Bamford do Zenith.
Very, very cool. Link it up.
Yep. That is a good one.
Sorry
I'm going to write a note down there. Dial artist.
Yeah, he's writing
Defy. Where was I at? Yeah, so I think this is a commercial follow-up, capitalising on that interest that Zenith has. Like, in Zenith, they've been sort of in the wilderness for a while. Like, they've sort of lacked a clear direction. They've done this, they've done that, and like famously, Julien Tournaire, the CEO, has said they are in the unique position of being a brand that is best known for a movement rather than a watch.
Lean into it.
But I think that's a problem for them. They need to find, I guess the other one is Omega and the Speedmaster. That works fine. And this is, I don't know. It'll do well for them, but I'm not entirely loving the hype.
Okay,
But-
so here's my. This is going to be a very controversial take from me. We might have to edit this out. Here's my
Jason,
thing.
717. We need to
717.
delete this incendiary, libelous.
This
content.
is. I might regret saying this. We'll see in the comments, but it's a nice standalone watch. I feel like if you bought this watch not knowing what a Rolex Daytona Panda looked like, you would bloody love it. If you're buying this watch because you can't get one, are you settling? And will your soul get crushed when someone 10 meters away looks over, sees the white dial, the subdials, the ceramic black bezel, the polished interlinks, the brushed, outer links, and says, is that a Rolex Daytona? And then you say, oh no, it's a Zenith Chronomaster Sport. Part of me just feels like that could be not that much fun. I said it. It's just in the shadow. It's in the shadow of the Daytona. That's
And I
the
guess
way they've taken it.
Yeah, and I guess that's pro and a con. Like, there will be people that just want a Daytona, want that look, don't want to wait 50 million years for one, get this instead, perfectly happy. And then
This happens all the time too. Like, there are so many brands that, the homage
version
brands.
of like the AP roller, all those integrated blue dials that we had
But it's never that close a price point. I don't think like there's always, it's very close in price. But look, as a standalone watch, it looks good.
I reckon you're going to have a lot of watch aficionados, quote unquote, that are going to sort of be like, well, actually, sort of justifying this.
Yeah.
You're right. It will be it's going to be, it's a weird feeling. I haven't seen it, full disclosure. I it could be totally different on the wrist, but
The pics look very good that Zenith put out. The product shots look amazing. I don't think it looks as good.
there's been some issues with some of those pics.
There has been. There's sort of, the big one is the monochrome press piece that they had that had the marker at 4 o'clock, the indice upside down, round the wrong way. And they did some lovely macro photography and videography. And
to be honest, I've had things like I've seen where press pieces that happens, like the sales prototypes and stuff. Maybe they are often put together on a very short timeline, so I can see how that happens. But
that's
they
true.
probably should have picked it up it's an unfortunate slip up. Like, I remember I had one at an old job where I was like, hey, just so you know, this watch you sent to be photographed, it's missing a number. What do you want us to do about it? And they're like, oh, maybe send it back. So it happens. Wasn't Zenith, by the way.
Rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's mostly all I have to say. I think.
There was one other thing that I don't know if you were mentioning it to me or someone was mentioning, like apparently there are sort of issues of availability.
Yeah, already. Well, I think because of the way that it made such a big splash and it was marketed, and look how many watches is Zenith making a year? Maybe I don't know what, like 40, 50,000. We'd have to check, but like they're not a huge volume watch manufacturer. We have 1 week left of January when we're recording this, so there's sort of rumors going around that the January allocation's gone. I mean, that could be 10 watches in Australia.
Yeah, I mean that's unsurprising in some ways because they're testing the market, and I'm sure they can, it's not the same situation as waiting for a steel Rolex, but there is some irony in the positioning.
Can't get it
of like, get the one you can. Oh, you can't get this.
Oh
one
wait.
But
be interesting to see what the secondary market does with these. It'd be really interesting to see. Hopefully it does well. We talk about Zenith quite a lot.
Yeah, traditionally Zenith have been, you get a bit of a discount on them.
A bit soft. Well, we talk about the brand a lot. There's some cool history there, as you mentioned. It'd be nice to see if this is sort of something that really helps draw a lot more attention to the brand and, maybe gives them some cash to do other cool stuff.
Now, I know we need to move on, but I want to ask you, this is something I haven't prepped with you. Would you wear, if, podcast goes really well, would you wear this or a Defy? One of those integrated titanium ones?
Yeah, Defy.
Why?
Because this looks too much like a Daytona. The Defy doesn't look like any other watch, really. That's what I love the Defy. We've Watchmatch made it before. I like the Defy. I think that's just such a cool, technical looking watch. It's fun. There's all those different colors and materials. I think we did the white one. The Defy.
The white one.
The Defy is like it's a cool watch. It's different and it's fun and it's not like the most iconic, it's impossible to get thing. Rolex in existence of the history of modern watches. It looks like its own thing.
Yep. Well, let's see what Chronomaster Sport does. Let's see where they evolve it as well.
I have one other question.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the elephant in the room, 10,000 pound gorilla. Would you rather fight one 10,000 pound gorilla or 10,000 duck-sized gorillas?
Yes. Okay. So this is a discussion I've had in many and numerous variations. Are there any? How am I fighting them?
However you want. You can fight dirty.
Okay. And do I have weapons? Or is it like, do I come across them on the street late at night?
Late at night on the street. The Matrix style, where they just keep coming at you.
And do I have to kill them? Or is it just a submission or something?
Submission.
Look, I mean, honestly, neither of those are a good fight.
No.
But I think I'd probably have more of a chance with 10,000 10,000 duck-sized gorillas.
Yep.
Because you can just get into your house, board up the windows, and there's nothing they can really do.
Just kick him away.
You know what I mean? Whereas a 10,000 pound gorilla, it's going to mess you up. What about you?
I like it. All right, well, let's move on. Have you been liking anything?
What have you been doing?
I've been liking something. All right, so it's a combination of things I've been up to, things I've been liking. Listen to another podcast. The shock, the horror. It's not watch-based, so it's okay. Oh. It is a science fiction podcast.
Whoa, Andy Green, you nerd.
Nerding out, called From Now.
Okay.
So it's basically it's basically around this like lost spaceship that returns to Earth 35 years after just completely disappearing. There's one survivor, and he looks the exact same age as when he left.
Yeah.
So obviously, this is like 2060 or something. The world's a different place. The world loses their shit when they kind of find out. He's reunited with his twin brother, who's like an old boy now. And
that old chestnut.
Absolute chaos. So it's cool for a few reasons.
So this is like a sort of a fictional storytelling podcast, yeah?
Yeah, it's very well done.
It's not a documentary.
No. No. It's immersive as well. Like if you really dial into it, headphones on.
Yeah.
The way they've kind of produced all of the sound and put it all together, it's very sort of immersive, like I said. The show stars and is executive produced by Richard Madden, who you might know from Game of Thrones, Robb Stark.
The bodyguard guy.
Taken Too Soon. Yeah, well, like the 4 seasons of Game of Thrones he did. And Brian Cox, who famously recently did Succession.
Old Irish guy from The Bourne Identity.
Scottish, I think.
Scottish? Oh,
Maybe.
nice.
I think
Probably
he's a
Welsh,
Scotsman.
and we've just offended the entire United Kingdom.
Yeah. But also, it's written and created by two guys. One of them is an Aussie, Reese Wakefield.
Hey, Reese. How you doing, mate? Good job.
Hey, fucking killing it.
Crikey.
One of the boys. Yeah. It's awesome. Check it out from now.
I will, because this is interesting, because I didn't know about this until you sort of told me about it just before. And it sparked a memory for me. I don't know if you recall this, but when we were preparing for this podcast, I attended a Australian podcasting conference.
I did.
Because that's the guy I am.
Yeah.
And one of the
Research.
people, one of the keynotes there had a podcast, and it was a similar sort of immersive narrative situation. And it also had some very talented voice actors in it, like one of the guys from The Wire and a couple of other sort of, fairly big name actors. And what I found interesting about it was that it's a fairly new sort of business model where they do this often on spec. So in this case, maybe Brian Cox and Richard Madden aren't charging for their services. But what they're hoping will happen is that enough people will listen to this and it will create a core audience where it becomes easy to sell it into like a Netflix series or a movie.
Yeah, interesting.
And so I
It
think
would be amazing.
This one that the guy I was talking about, who was talking about his project, I think it's been picked up and is turning into something now. Like, that was a few years ago. And so now it's in the process of, getting that. And those actors are probably getting a equity stake in the final movie, which was a good business decision,
Amazing.
which I found interesting.
Yeah, there's been a few that I've listened to that are sort of the fictional. The other one, which I'll link up as well, Felix, is called Blind Ties, and it's a similar thing. It's got Josh Gad in it, and it's just dying to be made into like a Netflix thing. I think that's how Dirty John ended up on Netflix. It was a podcast first.
Probably,
So
yeah.
It was, it was an amazing podcast. Anyway, enough of that other podcast. Stay on. We have
I've
to.
been listening
going.
to stuff too, Andy.
Oh, what have you been listening to?
Mate, did you read the notes? No, this is just a quickie, and it's one that I thought. I'm assuming a lot of our Australian listeners are across this, but maybe our American and international audience are not. I've been doing a fair bit of solid like keyboard times, just banging out the words.
Yeah.
And one of my go-to music things for that is the Flight Facilities Decades mixes. Are you across
Flight
these?
Fac. Yeah. They're amazing.
How good are they? Are you a fan?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you haven't listened to them before, they're 4 mixes that go from 1982 through to 2012. So they cover a year and they're like an hour or so each one. And it's just a fun mix of like music of the era mixed with like newsy sound bites.
Yeah.
But you know what I realised? We should be getting a new one
Yeah.
next
okay.
year, because the last one was 2012.
It's time.
It's time for another one, which, that'll be a wild set of sound bites.
I wonder if the Flight Fac guys are into watches. I hope they are.
Yeah,
if anyone
sure.
knows the Flight Facility guys, DM us.
Do you
Make
call
that
them
happen.
Flight Fac? Is that cool?
Flight Fac?
I-
Yeah. I think
I
that's their
was-
Instagram handle. Flight Fac.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is cool.
Get Flight Facility. All
They
right.
need it because they're Flight Fac. All right, let's take a break, throw the Flight Facilities on, and we'll come back and talk to Mr. Kirkland, who is no relation to Costco. This episode of OT the podcast is brought to you by our lovely sponsors, Longines. We have, of course, spoken a bit about their spirit line in the past, but today we thought we'd mix it up and take a look at something with a bit more of a heritage feel.
What flavour of heritage are you feeling today, Andy?
I'm thinking Longines Heritage Classic Chronograph.
I can certainly get behind that. And if your idea of the perfect chronograph is less sports and more mid-century elegance, I think you might be up for it too.
Felix, what did you like about this watch?
Honestly, a lot. I had one to wear a little while back, and let me say, this is one of those watches that looks better IRL than it does in the press pics.
100%.
Obviously, we've got to talk about the dial. It's tuxedo style and it's heavily inspired by watches of the 1940s. It's mostly silver with a black band for the hour markers that gives it that tuxedo feel. And then the complication comes into play. This watch is a twin register chrono with leaf-shaped hour hands and blued chronograph hands and a finely printed blue tachometer scale on the outside. It's really well done, and honestly, not a single detail on it would be out of place on an actual vintage watch. And do you know why, Andy?
Why is that?
Because this watch is directly inspired by a historic watch, specifically a chrono from 1943. And aside from the bigger case size and modern conveniences like an automatic movement and glass box sapphire crystal, it would be hard to tell them apart. Longines has really nailed this one.
Nailed it they have. Tell me about the specs, though.
Do you want to know the price first?
I'm all over at Felix. Longines.com tells me it's 4,550 Aussie dollars.
They're right. And do not forget the free shipping and 24-month warranty that you get when you buy from Longines online. Now, the Longines Heritage Classic Chronograph measures in at a nice 40 millimeters across. It's a steel case with a solid back, oval-shaped pushers and a large crown with that glass box sapphire crystal. All beautiful vintage notes. The movement is the automatic chrono L895, measures elapsed minutes and seconds, and has running seconds at 9 o'clock. The caliber has 54 hours of power reserve and is water resistant to 3 bars. So maybe take it off before you jump in the pool. It comes on a nice and vintage appropriate calf strap with pin buckle, but really, this watch is all about the dial. There's so many details here. I know I've said it, but it gets me every time. From the slightly different style hands in the subdials to the deco numerals and that old school printing. It's just mwah.
A tidy tux deserving of a chef's kiss. Felix, who is this for?
There's a few people I can see it working for. Just if you're a straight up Longines vintage fan, it's for you. Someone also wanting to add a little bit of complication to their wrist, but wanting to keep it classy at the same time, that's good too. But honestly, if you've got eyes and can see and have a yen for great timeless classic dial design, you cannot go too far wrong with this. And certainly not for the price. At 4,550 Aussie, it's a well-made modern chronograph in a heritage style that's really, really impressive.
Longines Heritage Classic Collection is quintessential classicism in watchmaking.
And the Heritage Classic Chronograph is no exception. Head to Longines.com to discover the collection today and buy online. We'll link it up as well as put some hands-on pics on our Instagram.
Alrighty, sounds great. Let's get back to the show.
Today's guest is a style guy, the host of Blammo, which is a weekly exploration of fashion and the people who shape it. If you haven't heard about him and his podcast in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Rake, Esquire, everywhere else on the internet, you've probably seen his trademark soft yellow cap on the gram. And we're absolutely thrilled to have Jeremy Kirkland on OT, the podcast. Hello, Jeremy.
Hi, I almost spit my water out when you said the trademark soft yellow cap.
Is it a soft yellow?
It is. It is. Excellent.
What's the Pantone?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like I should know. I have like 8 of them because they were all stolen from the ice cream shop that my little brother worked at. Actually, Patrick Johnson has one of those as well.
Ooh.
Old Patch.
Do they know that you have them? Like, is it... do they still exist?
Yeah, no, they still exist. I don't know if you've ever been to Shake Shack or heard of it, but there's the custard. So Danny Meyer, who created Shake Shack, who's one of the main guys, he is from St. Louis, and there's this really old ice cream like custard shop near, well, actually kind of like in downtown, called Ted Drew's, and that was basically what Danny Meyer was trying to emulate when he was making the Shake Shack custard. And so the weird thing is, like, in the winter they have their own Christmas tree business, but I mean it's like, I think, like one of the best quintessential sort of local big but not too big sort of businesses. No one's really heard of them outside of St. Louis. It's kind of an if you know you know. They also probably have one of the worst color schemes, but it's I think it's called like second level bad, in which like it's so bad it's good. In the sense it's like yellow and red and green all mixed together, and just like an awful sort of embroidery that resembles a home, like a house thatch roof or something. It's perfect. And it's also weird enough that, a weird yellow hat, you can wear it with almost anything you own, and it just kind of, exists. But I will refrain from using the phrase pop of color because I somewhat detest that term. When people talk about clothes, it's like, add a blank and blank for a pop of color. And it's like, what the hell? So
It's on the banned word list.
It's the same with watches.
Yeah, pop of color. Yeah.
Oh yeah, especially those new OPs, those doggone colorful pop of color watches. But anyway,
Guilty. Well, Felix mentioned you have the main podcast Blammo, but you've got a bit of everything going on, and it's sort of started off as one show and it's extended into a whole bunch, and we really want to get into that, and I think it's going to be a really great and interesting chat. But before we kind of get into your work, who is Jeremy Kirkland? Where did he grow up? What's the deal?
Sure, fair. I'm still figuring out who I am. Where did I grow up? I grew up in the Midwest, like smack dab in the middle of the United States, in a city called St. Louis, Missouri. And I spent most of my life here. And then, St. Louis is kind of weird because if you're not from here, people think it's the South. It's definitely not the South, but it's definitely not, the North, if that's a thing. It's smack dab in the middle of the U.S. The big flex that we have is it was where Anheuser-Busch Brewery started. It's also, there's a giant arch here, and they call it the Gateway to the West because Meriwether Lewis and Clark, this is where they led the expedition of the Louisiana Purchase, which is its own sort of weird thing where they, drag Sacagawea along. Little bit of
none at the museum.
History. Yeah. But it's kind of like your typical sort of suburban life. You got relatively middle class upbringing, but I was very, very, very into music, like really into music. Actually, my dad was in a band for a long time and played around with the guys from this band called America, which mostly a British band actually, but. My dad would go on tour with Dan Peek, and then he was in his own band called September, and so he spent a lot of time on the road, and then a lot of trips to Nashville, and I got really into music at a young age, and the whole goal, like my end goal, was like go be a rock star, right? Which is like kids want to be an astronaut, you want to be a firefighter, whatever it is. I want to be a rock star. So when I was 18 or 19, I guess, I don't know. Around that age, I moved to New York in 2004 and was living in New York up until September of 2020, and then actually moved back to St. Louis to kind of ride out some of the rest of the pandemic stuff. So I'm actually where I'm not too far from where I grew up right now. Yeah, full circle.
So we've had, what sort of shaped you growing up? We've also had a little bit of family and American history in there.
Yeah.
When did you first realize that style or fashion or clothes or whatever was more important for you than for most people?
Oh, fair question. I think it's like, I don't know. My dad traveled a bunch, and I got to know my grandpa, and even my dad a bit. Like they all, there was an idea of when you put on clothes, it could change not only how you looked to everyone else, but also how you felt. My mom, whenever I was sick or pretended I was sick and didn't want to go to school, my mom would tell me to like, okay, go change your clothes, put something nice on, and you're going to feel better. And weirdly, it works. It still works to this day, right? When you're having a shit day, you go put on a suit, and it's maybe not as bad. And, my grandfather actually was really, really, I wouldn't say careful, but very, very peculiar about what he liked to wear and how, for him, it was a nice jacket, a nice shirt, and a cup of coffee. And I mean, this guy, died maybe 10, 15 years ago at almost 100 years old. And so the era that he grew up in, it wasn't so much valuing the material things you had, but cherishing all you had, right? So not like the constant pursuit to get more or better stuff, but just to be so grateful for what you have and how it could make you feel a little bit better. And it's tough because I think when I communicate a little bit of this, you want to kind of gently navigate the line of materialism, which is definitely not what I would endorse. But there's something about when you put a nice shirt on or a nice sweater on, or something that has a story or something that can kind of align you to someone else or something else or be some sort of symbol, it changes who you are. I mean, not to get too sort of philosophical about it, but I kind of picked up on that when I was younger and got into high school. While I'm in high school, I started wearing suits and hoodies, and I was really into punk at the time, but it was like fake punk. I'm gonna be honest, it's more like emo now. And a lot of the bands I liked, they all were starting to do that, and I think that was kind of where I was like, oh, I don't know if I fit in here, because the stuff I was wearing, people were starting to call me names that I don't want to repeat on the show, and I was like, oh, this is a bummer. And and it was funny because I moved to New York and people were like, hey, your glasses are cool, or hey, your style's cool, or whatever it was. And it was just like this way to belong. So it's kind of something that, picked up on at a really young age and slowly sort of nurtured. But I think that the best thing, and I try to tell other people this, or like I used to moonlight as a stylist for a while for a few folks. And basically what you put on, kind of, you get the opportunity to indirectly tell the world who you are and what you want to be. It's kind of a special thing.
Yeah, I love that. What is that item of clothing for you then? Like, is it a suit or is it a particular shirt? I know it applies to me specifically. I mean, for watches, you put on a nice watch and it sort of can change the mood. But I was wondering, for you, what is it?
Probably it's a Navy sport coat. So I have a killer Navy sport coat from P. Johnson. I also have another Navy sport coat from Orazio Luciano, and it's just like, and I think too, especially with like the extremely sort of casual, I'm gonna air quote that word, dress that's kind of emerging and always kind of been there. Like if you wear a suit, a lot of people are gonna be like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" But if you wear a sport coat, people will be like, "Okay, this guy's just trying to look nice." And so yeah, for me, it's always that. Like I can kind of just bring a blue sport coat and put it on almost anything I have, and it instantly makes me feel a little bit better. Yeah, but I'd probably lean towards that. But the one I have from P. Johnson, no ad here. It's just
he's been on the show.
Yeah, I know.
He's been on the show.
It's it's nice. Yeah.
How'd you guys meet? How'd you guys meet?
Oh shit. Where did we meet? Sorry for the college radio dead air here.
No, that's all right. Because so for newer listeners, he was on very early on. I think he was like our 6th or 7th guest.
Yeah.
A really interesting chat. And obviously you guys knew each other, and he seems to, like yourself, have really good sort of long-standing relationships with a lot of people in sort of the fashion and menswear scene. And just curious to know how you guys connected.
Oh, you know what? I do know how we met. So first we met over email because I'm a huge fan of cold emailing people.
Good to know.
Yeah. And then I met him up at Pitti, at PT Uomo, and just kind of hung out with him. And it's tough because I think if you meet anyone in person for the first time, especially nowadays, right, where it's like maybe 90% of the people that you meet, you kind of already built up some sort of thing in your head of who you think they are based on what you researched on them. Based on, oh, okay, I'm going to go meet with this person, and I'm going to check out their Instagram first. I'm going to check out all these things. So you kind of walk into a room or walk into a discussion with someone with an idea of like, I think I know who you are, and I think we can make this connection from there. But I would say Patch was someone who was so different from that in the best possible way, because I think he's a handsome looking guy and he's got cool clothes, and so you kind of just assume he's going to be like what a stereotypical person of that nature would be, maybe a pompous asshole. And you hang out with him and he's just like sitting there having a cup of coffee, and he would never really talk to you about clothes. Like he doesn't, to be honest, all he talked to me was about books that he was reading, and I was like, what? And we kind of just like clicked. Cool. And I think the fact that I don't know. We're both genuinely trying to be nice folks in a world that is more or less built on imagery and vanity. I don't know. I wouldn't say we're like best of friends, but we try to be at least.
Like attracts like.
Yeah, there you go.
So you sort of mentioned it a few, like you've sort of dropped in a few things. You've moonlit as a stylist. You've done this. You've done that. You certainly, I know you were, I believe, involved with the Armory at that sort of early point of their American journey. Mm-hmm. You seem to know everyone. Maybe it's a cold calling email. I don't know. How did you get to where you are today? Like at the center of
masterclass on cold calling from Jeremy Kirkland. So.
Oh, I can tell you. Well, that's a great question. For me, a lot of the sort of relationships I've built have all been over time by just staying around. I mean, I've lived in New York for 16 years. And you kind of, I think the funny thing is it's not so much I know everyone, it's just all my other friends got way more successful than I'll ever be. And I'm incredibly happy for that. I mean, I remember being buddies with, like bumping into Ben Clymer of Hodinkee when I was starting to do watch stuff. And Ben was super nice to me because to be honest, I fell into watches just because I liked them, and there was really no one else like from the air quote men's style world that was really writing about them at the time. And so I was doing that at Esquire, and Ben very politely DM'd me and told me how wrong I was about everything I was writing about. And, we went out to lunch and just kind of became buddies. And of course, Clymer is now this legend and this sort of, Mount Olympus of watch taste and watch personalities and all that sort of things. And you just kind of like stay in touch with folks. I'm not really sure.
Just be a nice guy.
Yeah.
Well, don't be a dick. I mean, that's pretty simple.
It's true.
But there's a note that Ben Clymer episode, I think, is the first episode of Blammo I ever listened to. And it's one of your really, really early ones.
Yeah, he was very colorful in his words on that. He actually told me, he was like, interview. I wish I wouldn't have been so, but I mean, we were just two buddies just kind of shooting the shit, and I don't think we knew it would kind of get the traffic that it continues to get, actually.
But I mean, it is fascinating for me, like, sort of knowing him a little bit, how clear his intentions and his sort of thinking was, even because that would have been, he's talking about the early days of Hodinkee then. It's all there. Like, so if anyone's listening to this and they haven't, there's certainly a lot of people listening that are into Ben Clymer. They should definitely look that one up, and we'll link it up because it's a really, really great interview. Anyway.
Sure.
We'll link everything up. Awesome. Yeah. So obviously the big focus here is style or fashion or whatever you want to call it. In the experience that you have there been any moments that you've leaned in a little bit too hard? It probably applies a little bit more to fashion, I'd say.
Everything I've done and fallen flat on my face, and I am very grateful for it. And the people who have just been like, maybe you should reconsider that. I mean, like style in general, right? Like so much of it, like I was saying earlier, you're kind of figuring out who you are and what you want to tell the world. And when I was in New York, like very young and pretty stupid, I wanted to try everything, right? I mean, you're just like, it's like just a kid at a big food buffet. You just want to try a little bit of it all. And I think also my mindset, and maybe it's some sort of psychological issue in the sense, like I'm like, well, there's no point in just like doing something unless you go all in. So if you're gonna learn about suits, don't learn about one suit maker. Learn about as many as you can, and everything else about it. And so, I got really into Thom Browne. This is 2007 when he was making his stuff at Rocco, and befriended some folks there and was buying a bunch of suits. And then I was full head to toe Thom Browne, and that was all I cared about. And that's me. And it's funny because from being a stylist and trying to create my own style, you really realize that wearing all of one brand is not a style. Wearing, looking like a picture of a model or whatever it is, or of a of a look from a a designer. That's not style. That's okay, but it's just not. And in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I want to look like this guy, and then that lasts a couple years, and next thing you know, I'm like head to toe in Rick Owens, or I'm head to toe in Engineer Garments, or whatever it was. And I didn't really know how to put anything together unless it was all by the same brand. And I mean, I will totally, admit that. And so it was really only people like Mark Cho, people like Patrick Johnson, Ethan Newton, Mark Cho of the Armory, Ethan Newton of Brycelands in Japan, who was previously at the Armory, that I got to see how it was really about what other things that you would put together to kind of figure out who you are. And so like, it's a bummer because someone posted me on like MFA, like on Reddit, and it was like basically asking people to critique all the like fits and clothing I wore over the years. I actually mentioned this on a recent pod that I did, and it was a bummer because someone like messages me and is like, yo, you're like blowing up on Reddit right now. And I was like, oh, cool. And I thought it was like something positive, and it absolutely was not. And I was so frustrated because I was like, that's like me and, as like a young college wannabe kid, like wearing a bunch of clothes. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like give me a break, but of course, this was like the Tumblr era as you're trying to put everything together and kind of figure out like who you are. Like, and this guy's like, why is he wearing this? And why is it, and this guy's like, seems like this guy doesn't really know what he wants. And I'm like, you're exactly right. I was like 23 years old. Like, what do you know what you want at 23? And, so that was, in terms of like the mistakes I made, it was definitely that. But I would argue that those mistakes kind of helped me figure out how to be a little bit more confident in what I liked and what I could, understand. Like, it's weird, like to kind of push this back to my dad a bit. My dad was a pastor eventually, and I grew up, kind of in and around a church. And as I got older, I was like, Dad, I don't think I'm into any of this stuff. Like, I'm not into this God thing. I think I'm going to be a Buddhist, like, because this is all just messed up. And my dad was like, well, cool. Well, you better learn everything you can about Buddhism. And you better, if you're going to do something, you really should learn everything you can about it and figure out, like they're basically like kind of challenging me, like, don't just like jump onto a trend. Like if this is something you believe in, go learn about it, go dig into it. And I don't know, it was very helpful for me. I'm actually not a Buddhist anymore because I'm also an idiot. And when you mix those two things together, it doesn't always work. But it was something I took away from that I never really realized that that's almost like a cultural or philosophy that I just incorporate into everything that I've interacted with.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Well, now that you're sort of sharpened up the fits, excuse me. Yeah. Are there any sort of trends or looks that you now kind of look at or you've sort of seen coming over the years that you've just, decided to skip right past or you kind of shake your head at?
I wouldn't say I shake my head at anything, but I would say that the stuff that I come back to, like there's a reason why people call certain clothes basics. Because it really is the foundation of a wardrobe. And so when you look at a Navy sport coat, a good pair of jeans, like there's a reason why people write that story over and over and over again, because it's a good entry point. It's an equalizer. It's something that, and when I mean entry point, I mean economically, you can get a good pair of jeans for a variety of, in most cases, economically affordable prices, no matter what your income is. And like, that is something that I am really embarrassed that I kept trying to rise above because I more wanted to figure out like how to make a name for myself or how to be somebody versus just be confident in what I already had. And that's probably the one thing that so like, did I ever get into, the Bottega Veneta sort of anti-fit or the Vetements, any of the Demna stuff? Like, no, I think that stuff is absolutely ridiculous. But it's funny because all the people that got that stuff right now, they're not wearing it anymore. Like, I don't know a single person who went super crazy into like Vetements and like, massive oversized hoodies covered in embroideries that are wearing it now. But that's why it's called a trend. Like that's no one's going to go back to it. It's the same reason why you don't see guys running around in 2005 Dior suits. Like, people may have it, but they just sit in their closet and it probably doesn't fit them anymore. Right. So it's just like, but what people go back to every day is like, a Shetland crew neck sweater, that same photo of like JFK that they're trying to emulate, a nice pair of blue jeans that are not too skinny and they're not too big. It's like, 501s are going to always be a standard. It's just, that's kind of the way it is.
So you're saying that my Post Malone Crocs are going to be out next year?
Man.
Next year.
Sorry.
It is next year.
I don't know.
They're already out. You tell them they're done.
I don't know, because here's the tough thing too, is like, but so much of clothing is just being confident in whatever you're wearing. Like,
Yeah.
So if you like it, shit, wear it for the rest of your life, and you'll probably still look better than everyone else in the room because you feel good about what you're wearing.
That's sensible advice, Andy, and I wish I would echo it, but no.
You do you.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So you're now. I'm not trying to be rude here in any way. You're now
hit me.
living
Go
in the
for it.
burbs. You're living in the suburbs.
Yeah.
You got a family. You've got
do.
responsibilities.
Yep.
How do you keep on top of what's cool? And does it matter?
Asking for a mate.
Fair question again. You can edit out me saying that, but that's these are all actually seriously really good questions. I'm not cool anymore.
No, we're keeping them in. We just want the validation that we ask good questions.
Yeah.
Felix can relate, I think, to that the lostness of wondering if he's cool.
I never was cool.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, what does it mean right now to be cool?
Harry Styles.
Oh, Harry Styles.
I mean, that's a great fucking answer. Damn. Yeah, but
Soft
I mean,
boy cool.
what? So push back what? 10 years ago, what did it mean to be cool then? Justin Timberlake?
It was 20.
Yeah, 20 years ago. So I don't think that I'm gonna be. If you're chasing cool, you're just gonna be hollow and empty. And gosh, I sound like so cheesy, like some sort of self-help book that's in someone's LinkedIn profile, but it's just like it, if that's what you're going for, you're always going to be lonely at the end of the day because you're never going to measure up to someone else. And yeah, living in the burbs, being a dad, the things that I realize that I care about more than anything are probably the things that I've neglected the most. And at the end of the day, no one cares what jacket you have on when the world's ending. You care about, the person whose arm you're reaching for. And, it's actually something I've been wrestling with a ton as like an adult in his, mid 30s, right? Like, I left my family when I was younger because I had to go figure out like who I was going to be and what I want to do and make all these mistakes and try to pick up girls at bars and just be an absolute moron. And, thankfully I didn't hurt too many people in the meantime. But, sometimes I'm like asking myself, like, well, what was the cost of it? Because I moved back home, and my dad's health is just horrible. Like and like now, it's tough because I was like, oh, damn, like, did I miss 15 plus years of conversations with a family member that I could have had that could have challenged me or enriched me because I was trying to get my picture taken at a bar or trying to like meet Lindsay Lohan? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like you zoom way out and you're like, what the hell was I doing? And I'm grateful for all the goofy stuff that I did and for how it kind of helped build a career and help me figure out who I am. But geez, at what cost? And so I think that's the tough thing when you try to size it all up. And when I think about being back here, especially as we're making a bunch of shows and podcasts and, post-COVID where I'm just going to be on the road a ton, I'm now trying to figure out like, oh man, like I grew up with my dad on the road a bunch when I was younger. Like, is that going to be the same for my kid? And if so, like, how do I create and foster some sort of relationship with her so she doesn't have to peace out later to go, you know? And so you're like, damn, like so many just cycles of, figuring out who you are at all times.
Are you sure you're not a Buddhist still?
No, but I would say that I've tried to find many ways to connect more with, I don't know, like with the things that I really care about and neglected.
So around that sort of space, and I certainly can, relate to a lot of what you're saying there. Is style or the pursuit of it a young person's game?
No, because you can still have fun when you are my age, right? Like, put on a pair of pants. Like, right now, like I was like, I'm gonna talk to the OT boys. I'm gonna wear a nice pair of corduroys, and I got, my old Shetland sweater and a sport coat on, and I feel great. And that I continue to get to try to communicate maybe to just the people that I see on Zoom every day, but like, this is who I am. And it's also, my style is going to be in how I treat other people. I've only managed to build a relationship and network of folks across the industry and maintain a good reputation because, you want to treat people with respect and have some integrity in what you stand for. And that is style. I mean, you think about someone like Bruce Boyer, right? I have never met a single person in my life who's had a single negative thing to say about that guy. And that guy has been around for ages. I mean, he's an elderly man. But for many people, he's like the godfather, the creator of like writing about men's fashion, men's clothes. And he's just such a nice, caring, warm person that, like he could wear sweatpants all day, but like he still has great style and how he, and how he carries himself because of how he treats other people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So aside from some tips for how Felix can be more of a stylish daddy, for
Wait,
people
you're a dad?
stuck,
Yeah, man.
Felix is a daddy. Yeah.
Shit, how old are
and a
your kids?
zaddy. Let's take him from daddy to zaddy.
Oh, you mean that sort of daddy? Yeah, no, I'm one of those too. I have a 6-year-old son.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I was just joking to Andy before. I'm literally looking for New Balance at the moment. Just leaning hard.
That's the best part, right? Like, as you get older, you get to wear like air quote like dad clothes, and you're a dad, and it fits and it makes sense. You're like, isn't that awesome? Because if you're an 18-year-old kid and you're wearing like 501s and Levi's, you look like an idiot.
Yeah.
But when you're wearing it as a dad, it's like that's the best part about clothes. I can't wait to be even a more frail old man and get my jacket altered for my awful posture that I'm creating.
Throw a sweater over your hunch that's developed.
Exactly.
Cover it up. Okay. So for you kind of mentioned getting the fit on for the call, and I think that there's probably a lot of people out there listening that their lives have been changed by obviously working from home, working remotely, not necessarily needing to dress up that often. Do you have any advice or any core pieces of clothing that you think are perfect to sort of wear around and incorporate into that working from home routine that are going to make you feel a little bit better about yourself and potentially change the approach to the day through that?
Yeah.
Maybe some great staples or basics.
Yeah. Blue Oxford. Buy it from wherever you want to buy it. Make sure that it actually fits in the sense you can button it around your neck. And that's it. Like, I feel like, especially now, right? There's more of a reason than ever to try to feel good, right? Like, and I don't mean just like blatant hedonism, but it's just like, like put on a nice shirt, put on something with a collar, whether it's a polo shirt, a short sleeve polo shirt, or a Blue Oxford. Like, those are things that you can never go wrong with. I always thought this was a dumb idea, but I have like my shirts made through Ascot Chang, and they put the date on your shirt, like in the tag. I was like, this is so weird. Why are they doing this? And But, they were like, no, because people, people will sometimes ask us to remake something, and, they love it so much they don't even remember like how long they had it, and they don't know where it's from. And I was like, okay. And, I look at the things that I reach for every single day, and I looked at the shirt and it said 2013. And I was like, okay, wow. Yeah. And so you're like, this is a blue Oxford shirt. And look, let's be realistic. It's not the world's nicest shirt, but it's got a collar on it. It fits me well. It's fraying a little bit around the cuffs, but like this shirt's like almost 8 years old. And that's something that like I've worn again and again and again. It's like, how many things can you say about that with your wardrobe? And if you really do buy something basic like that, it's never going to go out of style. So like if you're sitting on a Zoom call, cool, you can wear jeans, you can even wear sweatpants, but like, is that really what you want to tell the rest of the world? Like, do you really want to tell the rest of the world that you wear sweatpants all day? Because if so, that's okay. But like, get a fit off, feel good, take a fit pic, but yeah, jeans, like just regular blue jeans and a blue Oxford is just, it's so awesome. Like you look at every single era from, I guess the 2000s are an era, and the 10s and whatever, but you look at the 90s and the 80s, the 70s and the 60s, people were wearing it all the time. And so there's a reason why that stuff kind of continues to go in there. Because when I was a stylist for a bit, and I worked with a few actors, I had one guy who was like, I just want to get rid of everything I have, because a lot of these guys, the wardrobe that they use on set, they get to keep. So if it's, like Paul Rudd and whatever he's got like 30 pairs of jeans, he's got like all these shirts, and he's like, I kind of just want to reach for one thing every day, and we went, and it's like, I get it if you want to buy the same, but I was like, okay, don't get any more than two. Cause I feel like that's a common thing with men specifically, where it's like, you find the thing that you like and then you just buy a bunch of it. It's like, you don't really need 5 of the same shirt, like maybe 2. Sure. So one that's getting cleaned, and then one that you can keep wearing. And, we kind of built this uniform of just blue Oxford shirt, white t-shirt, blue jeans. Like that was it. And that was like what he was wearing for, just for like out and about. And it was great. And like we took the rest of his stuff and just donated it. I mean, he's like, I'm not going to wear this weird, like this sort of like oversized sweater here, or this thing that was given me here, this thing from set. And I was like, auction. I'm like, you're a celebrity, like auctioned it off. So some of that stuff he auctioned off and donated to charity. But yeah.
So I just want to talk. We've talked about clothes. We've talked about style. We've talked about how to make us better looking people.
Yeah.
I think we need to start talking about your fashion media empire.
Okay.
But which is, I don't know if that's what you call it, but it's what I'm calling it.
Sure.
So, but more broadly in that sort of men's style fashion scene, it used to be, Tumblr. It used to be blogs. Now it's, I'm assuming, Substack and TikTok.
Yeah.
Does how the medium that people communicate change the message, or is it all the same? Like, is the fact that stuff's now on short videos different, like in terms of what people like and style, or is it, the essentials are timeless?
Well, I mean, to zoom way out, every single person that's making their own sort of style thing just wants to be seen and heard, right? And people are just going on whatever whatever forms of communication that's like the most popular. So like, I'm not on TikTok, even though it's wildly popular, but I also don't jump into my clothes every day. You know what I mean? Like, you look at someone's TikTok and look,
snap your fingers. Yeah,
I love it. But it's like every single person will be like, I'm going to jump, clap into this outfit and clap into this. And it's like, that's cool, I guess. But
I just wish we did, though.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fun. I do think it'd be cool to be like the Jetsons or something, and you just have like your clothes like zapped on you, or you get dropped into it. But maybe, or Pee Wee Herman style. I'm not sure we're totally there yet. But with things like Substack, again, it's just like someone wants to contribute, and someone wants to kind of add to the, noise. Like I'm I think like podcast is probably where I'm going to stay indefinitely. Obviously, as your editor will have to, testify to, of just like my long rambling windbag stuff, that it's just easier to verbally process myself to get to the point versus sit and write and edit. And also as people, as we're getting a little bit more entrenched with devices glued to our hands at all times, like we want very easily consumable media, and podcasts are great. Like I'm sure you guys can deal with this because like it's so passive, right? Like, have you ever sat and like listened to a podcast and not done anything else? It's like, no, you literally listen to it while you are at, the gym, or while you're walking outside, or, doing something else. Like it's just on in the background. And I feel like that's kind of like where a lot of people are going at these, like any, whatever the popular form of communication is. But
Sure.
if it's different, it's only different based on the sort of the demographic that's doing it. I think a lot of younger folks, I mean, if Jeremy Kirkland of whatever 2004 is in New York and TikTok's there, you better be, damn sure I'd be using TikTok, jumping into my outfits, trying to show everyone whatever Dior jeans I just spent my whole month's rent on.
Wow.
Yeah, right. So I think it's just kind of where, I guess like from all this stuff, I'm kind of learning like, well, maybe like, what do I have to add to TikTok? What do I have to add to those things? Like nothing really. And there's a lot of other great folks on there. So I'd much rather call out, the people that are on there doing a great job and making cool stuff than trying to just be on it myself. What am I going to go on there and be like, everyone, the best thing is a gray sweater. Let me jump into it for you. And so, out of time. See you next time.
I do want to. No, you're absolutely right. But I do want to get your take, because I know you had Blackbird Spy Plane on recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel, you've got a lot of sort of Blammo alum in the Substack space. Is there anyone that you're subscribed to that you would particularly recommend in terms of newsletters?
Oh, yeah, man. Rob Lim.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, you might have to edit this because I need to like find out exactly what his Substack is. But
We can work it out. Is his name
Yeah.
Rob Lim? Well,
Yeah,
we'll work
Rob
out what it
Lim
is. We'll put it in the show notes.
it's his Substack. So Rob is he is one of the he's like actually one of the admins on the Blammo Slack. He does stuff for Heddles. I mean, he's kind of like an OG like forum head. Like I don't know if any of your listeners know about Superfuture or any of those other things, but I think he's one of the best writers like out there. You have people like Derek Guy, who's also a phenomenal writer of Die Workwear. He doesn't really have a Substack, but I mean, his just incredibly detailed, like history tied explanations of things. I mean, because like when you write about like fashion, you're really just writing about culture and culture of the time, right? So you really have to be a little bit more of like a anthropologist, I guess, to kind of really dissect some of these things versus be saying like the fabric was great and the texture was cool. Like you can do that, but I'd say that's not really explaining. It's more observing. And you can do both well, but like someone like Derek Guy or Rob Lim, the stuff that they write about, it encompasses everything. And you realize how something like fashion is just tied to so many other things. But like, do you guys read Die Workwear?
Every so often.
Yeah. And, I would say like his whole, I think like the title is like a blog about classic menswear and style, but like, he wrote about like production, like actually like what, like a recent thing it is like the production of clothes and like what it actually takes to make that stuff and why, when people talk about things that were made in America and then how things went to Canada and, you get into like politics and NAFTA and how that happened and how, I mean, and that's all fashion, right? Like it's so, Derek is just a phenomenal writer in that sense. And for me, if we zoom way back and I was talking about how I just wanted to learn everything I could about something, like it wasn't enough to like something. You had to know as much as you could about it so you could truly understand it. And so, knowing how Brooks Brothers production is or something like that.
Nice.
Like I feel like I can have a more engaged and loving relationship with the things that I own or seek to own.
That's a great answer. I think it's time to talk about your audio empire.
Okay.
What's Blammo? What is it?
Great question. Still, Blammo's a work in progress. I'm going to be honest with you, because I had a listener message me the other day and was like, you know, and they were episode names. They're like this person, this person, this person, and it was a very I don't know, critiquing email, I guess. But they were like,
Oh.
you know, these new guests that you have, they just don't resemble this world that I want to, you know, continue exploring. Like, to try to quote the title back to me, and I was like, fair enough, man.
Savage.
Right? I know. I was like, I get it. Yeah, I was like, Blammo is kind of just me and my understanding and my sort of exploration of this whole world. And like, sure, I'm gonna have someone like Tim DeSaint, who's got, you know, multiple millions of followers on TikTok, who's a young guy who's trying to figure out his style, and then I'm gonna talk to, you know, like a cultural observer, like Jonah Weiner, Blackbird Spy Plane. Just because those guys don't talk to you about a Savile Row suit doesn't mean they don't deserve a seat at the table. And it's just like, you know, and I was trying to lovingly, you know, respond to him that, like, you realize that the elitism that all these people are trying to rebel against in like fashion and style and like, and, you know, even to like Vivienne Westwood stuff, you're like, this is you. Like you want to just stay in this world. And like, I was like, maybe I'm just not the show for you anymore. And I celebrate that, but, you know, best of luck. So
also, it's my show.
Well, yeah. And that's a tough thing, right? It's like, you know, I'm grateful and I'm so honored for every single person that wants to listen and wants to kind of come along the ride for it. But, you know, I think it's a work in progress, and people want you to be certain things to them at certain times of their life. And, you know, we all kind of grow and change. I mean, that doesn't mean that like we don't talk about clothes or fashion anymore, but I think my understanding of the world is just maybe not as narrow as what it was when I started. So yeah, I guess that's what Blammo is, but it's still, you know, a pod for nice show for nice folks.
So that's a really, you know, the fact that it's a work in progress is absolutely fine. But what did you want it to be when you started? Like, clearly you've decided, I'm going to make a podcast about, you know, style and fashion. What did you set out to achieve, or like, what was the original impetus?
Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it was just an outlet. Just like when I was doing Tumblr, when I was trying to write about watches, like I just, you know, I'm such a evangelist of anything that I like. I just want to communicate it to the rest of the world. And at the time, like I was working at the Armory, and I was realizing, you know, like all my buddies were just becoming better and better and more successful. And I just kind of wanted to celebrate that and learn more about them. And also, I mean, because I actually spoke on this thing about this like podcast summit the other day, and people were talking about like trying to grow their show and trying to evolve their show. And like the original Blammo episodes, like I think the very first one that's still on there when we had Brian Davis on was when I had a co-host, a guy named Noah Stittleman, and him and we were doing the show together. And I was like, hey, let's get some feedback from folks. Like, how can we improve? Like, let's like always try to improve and get better. And he was like, dude, this is just like me, you and I hanging out. Like, I don't really have that desire. And so he kind of like, you know, very gracefully just kind of bowed out of it. But like, that's the mindset I've always tried to have, is to kind of like keep pushing and evolving. And so with Blammo, like it was really just like, let's see what happens. And I think, you know, it really wasn't until like, you know, I remember having a few advertisers and like having just, you know, people that liked the show that wanted to support it. And, you know, as it grew, you kind of keep continuing to try to raise the bar on yourself. And now in my mind, like it's not enough to try to, I don't know, to try to like, just like make a show and put it out there. Like I want to find a way to also tell stories and employ people. Look, I'll be honest. I mean, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's like 5 or 6 people that work on the show, all of which are paid. And, you know, I want to pay people more and pay people better. I mean, thank God for things like Patreon that like right when the pandemic hit, I lost like 80% of my year in like a day.
Wow.
Yeah, it was freaky. And I mean, and I'll be honest, the first like couple years of Blammo, like I just crushed all the savings I had and was freelancing and doing whatever I could on the side. But it didn't really turn into anything, and I was okay with that because it was still just for the love of the pod, you know. You just like put it out there and just like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can relate, and
Yeah,
I guess
right?
you know when we started OT, obviously we both spoke to you a bunch, and it's been really cool for us to watch. I know Felix has been a fan for longer than I have, but to watch your growth and success and see where it's gotten to the point that it is today. So the question I have is, how did you expect to have this growth, or would you have been happy just sort of ticking along, you know, losing a hell of a lot of time and spending money on something that you're just really passionate about? Or were you sort of hanging in there knowing that one day it was sort of going to explode like it has?
I don't think it was ever going to explode. I mean, for me, like I was just excited when at first it was like people that I didn't know that were messaging me or listening to it. That was a big thing. And also like at the time, you know, when we were doing podcasts or when I was doing the podcast, I would email someone trying to ask them to do it. And they're like, what's a podcast? You know, I used to like in my pitch, I had a separate thing of like, hey, this is what a podcast is. And this is
Amazing.
you know, and it's great now. I mean, geez, you know, because this was like early 2016. And now like you don't have to explain it as much, and it's great because a lot of other people are doing pods, and you know, and it's funny because there's a few other pods that have come out that are like, you know, that talk about like men's fashion and style. And I remember like a few listeners messaged me and were like, yo, this pod came out, like what are you gonna do about it? And I'm like, what?
Same.
Like, reach out to them and tell them that it's awesome. Like, way to go, Handcut Radio, way to go, like every other single what style and direction.
You mean you don't sabotage them? You don't, you know, send the assassins out?
Yeah, I'm just like,
eliminate
so
them.
bogus. That's like Condé Nast, man. Do you think you know, because I remember going into the GQ office once and they were like, yeah, you know, Esquire was doing this year. We were better. I'm like, really?
Man, we've been dodging the Hodinkee hitmen for nearly a year now. It's just they're really trying to take us out.
Well, and luckily you got someone like Steven, right? Like I love Steven Pullman so much. That guy's not competitive. Maybe he's competitive about running, but like those dudes, those guys.
Architecture,
I mean,
photography. Woo.
Yeah, sure. But like, you know, at their core, you know, it's a rising tide lifts all ships. The fact that there's
100%.
shows like Handcut, there's shows, you know, like OT and all these other things, like, because with a podcast, as soon as you're done listening to it, what do? You're like, cool, I want to find another one, which is a bummer when you're making them, right? Because you're like, dude, I just spent ages making that show. But it's great when you're a listener because there's just more things to like and listen to. So I don't think I ever, you know, sorry that I didn't really answer your question. Like I didn't really expect it to do anything. And I still, you know, I'm still grateful that people keep listening to it. I will say that, you know, I often think that we peaked and that, you know, like, who did I reach out to the other day? And I was like, oh, you know, I'd love to, you know, have you chat on Blammo, or some like actors person like asked if they could come on, and like that was really cool. But I was like, I mean, is it really gonna fit? Like our audience is still like pretty narrow. It's pretty niche. And then I used to be really mad at that. I was like, you know, I want to be like Joe Rogan, or I want to be like this. And then I was like, no, I don't. Like podcasts are great because they're niche. So just make a different podcast. And that's kind of where we started doing it too, because I mean, I have other friends and other people I know who are great storytellers, who are who have, you know, awesome original ideas, and you know, when you realize that there doesn't need to be one podcast for everything, you get more interested and excited to just help other people make pods. And I think while I do love making Blammo and working on it, I've been so burnt out like the past year, like everyone, that I've realized that like it's sometimes like I didn't have the joy that I used to have, but I was getting all that other joy by like working on like Coffee with the Greats, or working on, you know, any of these other shows that, you know, can also empower and equip and, you know, continue to sort of foster a world where people aren't as lonely as they think they are.
I think that's a really good use of, you know, how Blammo has evolved and where it's going. Can you maybe sort of tell us a little bit about some of those directions that you're,
Sure.
you know, expanding into that network sort of, you know,
Yeah.
entity?
Yeah, I mean, we have a show we're working on. I can't talk too much about this one show, but like, there's here's an example. We are working on a show about my dad. That
Cool.
you know, when I was trying to sift through some of my dad's music recently that I'd recently discovered, my mom was like, "Can you just find it and get it on Spotify?" And I was like, and in my mind, I'm like, how hard is it to get something on Spotify? And it's actually not that hard, but throughout the process, I was listening to all my dad's music, and like my dad he's had Parkinson's for 27 years. You know, I mean, he's had deep brain stimulation, he's had all that stuff, and his dementia now is through the roof. So you can't really talk to the guy. But I was like, oh man, these are songs that he wrote when I was, 5 years old, 4 years old, that like you get to kind of like form this connection in this direction of like what he was thinking. And I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, "Oh, you should make that a podcast." And I was like, "Really?" And so we started working on that, and that's been super interesting of just kind of learning about, exploring like what does it mean to grow old, and to also reconsider like how we relate to family members as we evolve ourselves. In this case, my dad through his music. So, I mean, there's a show like that, which is not fashion related at all. I mean, we have Coffee with the Greats, which is basically Miles Fisher's show. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I don't really do anything on it at all. It's kind of,
You make the coffee.
Yeah. I mean, we help get the show distributed and stuff like that. But I mean, I can't text Bob Iger. Like, just be honest. I mean, I'm not there.
Cold emailing.
Yeah, I do cold email. Oh man, I got some great cold email stories. But yeah, I mean,
is that another podcast? Cold emailing with
I'm trying to think. Yeah. I cold emailed someone, it's funny. Way back in the past, I emailed Tom Brown, like his personal email, and was like, "Hey, do you want to come on the show? We met at this one time." His response was, "No, not really." And I was like, "Okay, that's fair."
We've been there.
Yeah,
we've been there. We've been shut down by legal departments.
Oh yeah,
too high risk. We had one that we were really excited about, and then a legal team said, "No, no, you can't."
Right.
But it's just part of it, though, and I've found it. I always talk to Felix about it because it's always fascinating. Yourself included. Like, obviously being a guest on our show today, we are always pleasantly surprised with the people that say yes. It's always you never expect it, and then the people that tend to say no, you either had a feeling they would, or it's a complete surprise, and you're like, "What? I thought you'd be a sure thing." So it's just part of the game.
Yeah, and like I get it, and I try not to fault anyone for it. But it's just like, I mean, it's tough because I used to take things like deeply personal. I basically view it as like not being like me physically not being accepted, and I'm like, well, like we just emailed about this, or I just texted you about this, and it's like, oh, and in some cases they're like, well, maybe what's timing around my next movie, or what's timing around this, and or like people be like, I just don't know what I would want to talk about, or and like. That's okay, because I'll be like, well, you leave it to me. I'll just fucking talk the whole time. Like, but I think that's something that I've really, really wrestled with. But I still like try to just continue to email people, because basically, like, I still just view. I talked to a publicist once, and they were like, well, basically, no always is not yet, unless they say don't ever email us ever again. Yep. No just means not yet. And so, I mean, I continue to ping Tom Brown and ping, whomever. I have this like massive Excel sheet of like people that I reached out to and when was the last time I reached out to them. And sometimes I'll kind of like be like, hey, look, look what happened here. Like, oh, hey, look, we were featured here. Like, you want to come on now? And it's just like, and I get it, but and I think that's a part of the industry in the world that I like really detest. But, it's, you got to deal with it.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it. We that's how you get the good guests, the big fish. Who's your dream guest?
I I would say definitely the biggest dream guest is to talk to Ralph.
Yeah.
I do know from some Ralph employees that someone played Ralph some of my podcasts, and he was pretty into it. And then I was like, okay, cool. And so I made the request to the Ralph PR folks, and they're like, Ralph has been really overexposed due from the anniversary stuff. So, we're not doing any press. And I was like, okay, well, they didn't really say no directly. And so, I mean, I continue to just try to gently nudge the Ralph folks on occasion. And I hope and pray that, I think, that's the one tiny silver lining of the pandemic and everyone working at home is I'm like, it's just a Zoom call. They're already doing it. Like, it's super easy.
Yeah.
Because I will say too, like when I had such a high standard, I had time to talk to a few other people, not in person. And I refused to do it because I thought that people wouldn't want to hear it. And I really regret that.
Times have changed. Times have changed.
Andy and I haven't been in the same room since April, so
We've done one guest in person. I think that's it.
That's
one guest. Yeah.
But I think Ralph Lauren is an exceptional guest to aim for. And certainly we had Wei Ko, who I think has recently been on your show again, and he had some outstanding Ralph Lauren stories. So I think this is probably the time that we need to start talking about timepieces. Jeremy Kirkland.
Let's do it.
And I want to kick off with the question basically we got you on this podcast for. And I suspect I know the answer. Is Seiko Boys your greatest achievement in life?
I'm going to have to say yes. I think you're right.
Yep.
Yeah. When like the Seiko folks reached out and they were like, what is the Seiko Bois? And I was like, what? And I was like, what are you talking? They're like, yes. And, I didn't really, here's the thing about Seiko. I'll just say this really, really quick, and I'll probably take too long to say it. It's just such a like easy watch, and it's a watch that like, it doesn't really, for so many people, they think like, look, I'll be honest, like Seiko is a mall brand. They're an airport brand, right? Like that's like cringeworthy, and that's the last thing they would ever want to hear. But like, you could just get tons of them and all over the place. But people didn't realize the work and the like true beauty and craftsmanship that was in that. And like what made Seiko's like such incredible watches, especially for the money. And being that I didn't have that much money, I just really, really embraced Seiko like as hard as I could. And of course, like being a little bit loud and obnoxious about it, I was like, yeah, like, my wife would like, she would always make fun of me about like, oh, like he's a soup boy today, or he's a this boy today. And she's like, oh, look, you're a Seiko boy today. So like the credit goes to her actually. I was like, Seiko, I was like, that's great. And so I just started doing that. And then I had all these people responding to me and being like, oh, I'm a Seiko boy and all this. And I was like, great. And then a few like bigger like writer friends messaged me and were like, I now want a Seiko. And now like they're getting Seikos. Now all these other people are getting it. And it's also like, if you tell someone about a watch and they go and they look it up and it's over $1,000, they're like, who do you think I am? I'm not paying that much for that. And you're like, oh yeah, because you don't live in a world where you somehow justified that money to buy that watch. So it's just like, it's almost like the Blue Oxford. It's just like the ultimate equalizer. Like you'll have a, super rich guy wearing a nice Seiko, and you'll have just like a kid who just got into watches wearing a nice Seiko. And it's just like the way we can all come together, because that's never, ever going to happen with Patek Philippe or even a Rolex, right? It just won't happen. And those brands
Patty
would
boys.
die if it did. Yeah.
Well, you've been into watches, as you've just mentioned, for a while, and I know sort of keeping a close eye on your wrist that a few pieces have bounced around. But what do you find yourself drawn to aside from the Seiko boys? What's earning some wrist time?
Great. I've been into some like vintage Zodiacs, which would be kind of cool.
Okay.
I got, so to keep Blamo going, I had to get rid of a lot of watches over time, which is fine. I had bought a Batman, a BLNR, and I was like, I'm gonna keep this. This is gonna go to my kid. This is gonna go, And I got it. And I got it for retail, and I was very lucky. And like things went south, and you realize that like that's basically a nice blank check sitting in front of you. And watches are great, but you can't take them with you when you die, right? So I was like, all right. And so I sold that and did okay. And then I had a Patek Reference 96 that was like, I was like, this is the watch. It's going to be, I'm going to carry this with me forever. I finally owned a Patek. I think I got that watch for like, it was still a lot of money, but I think it was like $3,500 at the time. So
Okay.
it wasn't that much. And that like kept me going for almost a whole year, selling that watch. Cause like, obviously they all blew up, and especially in Japan, everyone wants 96 for some reason. So great. And I was like, I have too many watches that don't really mean anything. Like I had an old IWC that I never really wore. That was really cool, but didn't really wear it. I had a Polar Router, and I think I'd gotten that for like $800.
Yeah, sure.
And so, I had bought all these watches when no one really gave a shit about them. And now for some reason this do and did, but I wasn't even wearing them. So I sold most of them. Now I just have, I have this Rolex Datejust, the 1601 that I got off Eric Wynn, which is cool because it's, the bracelet on the inside says made in USA. And it was when Rolex was making the steel bracelets in the United States to avoid some duties, classic tax evasion.
Yeah.
Gotta do it when you can. And I mean, I love that watch. It's a bummer. I do hope to one day buy back some of the watches, but the longer that I haven't had them, the more I realize I never needed them, which is kind of nice. But like Seiko's, there's a few that I can't get rid of. I mean, I did get that diver reissue, which is pretty slick. And then, and I still have a Pogue, which is like that to me is.
Yeah, classic.
It's funny because like that Pogue, they actually used the photo of it in GQ, and they were like, when I talked about Seiko's in there. And, I'm hoping maybe one day I can attach that and I don't know, sell it at auction and I don't know, give it to my kids.
They're only going up. I reckon hold on to that one for a while. You'll pay more than a couple of $100 for it.
Oh yeah, and it's
yeah.
I remember I had like 2 or 3 Pogues, and it was funny too because even like some of the other watch folks I was talking to, they were starting to buy them up now that like Seiko's getting pretty hot, and they're realizing that some of these watches that they have, right? This is a Pogue, right? And I think they paid $700 for it, and this is maybe a couple years ago. The dial was fake, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah,
wow.
They're like, "Who's faking a dial?" And then they're like, "Oh, you know what?" And this bracelet's wrong, and it's like, "Wait, what?" And so like that is a thing that I never thought I would see, and it's kind of freaked me out a bit because I used to just kind of buy vintage Seikos blindly, like when I had too much to drink on eBay, and because you're like, no one's gonna fake a Seiko because it's just it's not worth faking. And now that they're worth more, like I was like, wait, people are faking Pogue dials? You're like, oh man, you're like, so
pay attention.
That's where we're at.
Yeah. So I don't know.
So I have a question. So, I mean, we were originally going to ask if you have there's a Grail timepiece that you want to get, and obviously hearing about the Batman and sort of how that was the piece that you sort of intended to keep forever, really good intentions, and then sort of things changed and you sold it. Mm-hmm. Do you have a watch that you kind of view as a Grail, or is that sort of perspective on owning anything sort of changed for you now?
I mean, I would love to have a Lange up down, like a 1815 up down. I think that's probably one of the most beautiful watches ever. I mean, it's a hunk of gold, first off. Like that, when I really think about Grail. So when I think about Grail, I also think that it's like pretty much unattainable. I don't think I'll ever have the means to purchase it, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But that's something I've just always loved. And in a sea of Royal Oaks and Daytonas and even like 3940s, like Patek 3940s and stuff, like the up down. I mean, you just don't see them, that many of them. And I also think like, I feel like sure Lange's going up a bit, but like Lange just doesn't make very many watches, like ever. And they never really have. And I think people kind of forget about that. Like, so you're not going to see very many because they just didn't make very many. And so I'm kind of hoping that someday, if it ever does actually be an empire and I get cash and the stars perfectly align where I can do that, like I would do it. But until then, I'll just sit and dream.
Living the dream. I think that's the only thing. You've got to keep going. And I know certainly Andy is that way inclined. He's always one for the next watch.
Yeah, you guys got some fire on your wrist. Jeez, I follow you guys
does.
on Instagram.
I try and keep it. I try and keep it authentic with the Seikos. You've got some Seikos though too, don't you, Andy? Are you a Seiko boy?
I've never owned a Seiko.
Fail.
But you've got the
I think
you've
I gotta
got the
go.
T-shirt.
This podcast is over.
But you've got the Seiko boy T-shirt.
I know, I need to
Andy.
get one. I've got plenty of G-Shocks, plenty of Casios.
It's not the same.
God, I know.
We've got to change that this year. 2021, the year Andy
Yeah,
gets a
let's do
Seiko.
it.
I mean, you have some serious heat on your wrist at all times. How has a Seiko never entered the picture? Is it just because you're like your big boy watch?
I just missed that phase of like my watch sort of collecting. I sort of went from dress watch into sort of like independent micro brand type style, and then the mainstream brands after that. And I just missed the Seiko thing. And now for me, it's kind of, if I go for something that's like a little bit more entry level or affordable, it'll be a Halios or a Bamford, or what did I just get? I just got the Casio times Bamford. So I feel like I've skipped it, but I also don't want it to be a waste. Like if I'm not going to wear it, I don't really want to get one.
Sure. You don't. Andy doesn't tend to acquire for the sake of it. Like you tend to wear most of what you've got. So I can see that.
Okay, that I actually really respect. Okay,
I've got a question.
I've been wearing the
sorry,
pink OP lately, as we talked about earlier.
all right, okay.
He's just got to get that. He's just got to drop it
That's
in
my
every
latest
episode.
watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just drive the prices up.
Jeremy, I've got a question. I think you'll be quite. This is more of a personal. I don't know how many of the listeners are going to care about this question, but I'm quite into it.
Fire away.
You speak to sort of brand executives from the fashion and the style side of things, and you've also spoken to quite a few watch executives. And I'm kind of low key obsessed with Swiss watch executives. Are they the same as the fashion people, or are they really different?
Okay, this brings me. I gotta try not to go on a diatribe here. Okay, every brand right now is kind of realizing that if you're a younger person and you're someone who's getting into a brand, like the newer generation, including most of ours, you don't really want to patronize a brand. You want to support a brand. You know what I mean? Like that's the keyword that people look at. So people don't really want to just buy something from a brand. They want to represent the brand. They want to have a deep intertwining connection with the brand. A lot of the people like that, I see, like the product has to be more than good enough. The brand has to mean something else to them too. And I think, some of the Richemont folks and some of the Swiss folks are picking up on this a little bit more. And like the best example of that is someone like Chris Granger, who is, or like, like Edward from Ed Moser, or from H Moser, whom they're a little bit more outward with their personalities, with their recommendations, with their Instagram, with their, they're okay having a more of a direct relationship with their consumers. And, like a new younger guy doesn't really care about a Rolex as much as he cares about a new IWC, which some people are like spitting their drink out when they hear that, but it's because they feel like they're friends with Chris Granger. And like, if someone's like, well, who's the CEO of Rolex? They don't know. They don't care. Like, I mean, that stuff's always going to be shrouded. And so it's, I mean, not that the name of the CEO, but just like, like he's not going to go on
going to
Instagram.
comment on your Instagram. Yeah.
The access.
And tell you what his run was on Strava. But like that is what people want now, is they want a deeper connection with every brand that they support. And so that's really happening with watches. And I think that's also why Hodinkee doing so well, because people feel like they're connected with Hodinkee. And it's like, you just bought an Omega from an AD. Like, what are you talking about? Like you can get that watch for like, X% off through some gray dealer, right? Like, sorry, I said the word, but it's just like, no, but people are like, no, I got this from Hodinkee. Like I'm connected. I'm a part of this group. I'm a part of this tribe, for lack of a better term. And I think that's stuff that fashion brands have always been have always represented, because the designer's name is who you're buying. And so they, Ralph Lauren is all about the world of Ralph Lauren and connecting with Ralph. And when you buy Ralph Lauren, that you're saying you're a part of that world. But when you buy Rolex, what? You're a part of a boardroom? Like what? Like what do you? So I think they're starting to realize that is the new thing that they have to shoot towards, because look, I mean, you can't just constantly bank on an aging and dying generation to survive. Like, they may have the most money at the time, but the world's turning still, so that's really exciting and cool for me to see brands like IWC just be so, and even Seiko with like a gajillion different releases, because Seiko is okay with having other people represent them in that sense, right? They're while say, I'm not trying to pick on Rolex, but they're just the biggest, so everyone wants to. Like Rolex, you can't really represent them, and they won't really tell you too much about them, so it just exists on its own. And maybe like the allure of mystery will only last for so much longer. But otherwise, it's like it's IWC because you're all about Chris, or it's Seiko because you're all about this brand that's doing their custom Seiko, or it's I don't know, Bamford because George likes you and follows you on Instagram. Like whatever that is, whatever that is. And I think that is actually kind of exciting.
See right through it. Saw right through it. That is an amazing answer. That is a really amazing answer. What I want to ask you, and it's something we do with every guest as we wrap, because I know we've gone over, is for some recommendations. Something you've been listening to, maybe something you've been watching, maybe something you've been reading, maybe it's an ice cream store you want to steal a cap from. Yeah, maybe it's your favorite Australian watch podcasts. But what have you got? What do you think that our listeners will enjoy?
Anything? Well, I've been really, really going nuts with books lately, because I mean, yes, I do. I love podcasts and I listen to tons of podcasts, but I just finished a pretty hard to read book called Masters of the Air, which is a book about the World War II bomber pilots. Did you guys ever watch? Did you ever watch like The Pacific or Band of Brothers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Masters of the Air was actually supposed to come out this past November, but COVID and all these sort of delays. Yeah, and that's supposed to be, it's really more about the history of the 8th Air Force and the U.S. Air Force and how that was, basically how the Air Force was created. And, I think in times of turmoil, which was kind of happening with all the COVID stuff, I dove really like headfirst into periods in history where things were really tough in the world, and how did the world evolve, and like what happened from it, and and so I was kind of like looking for like feel good stuff, and I didn't exactly find that in Masters of the Air, because you realize just the gruesome, horrible things that happened in war that you forget, and when it's like a super long book of just multiple firsthand accounts, just like bombarding you, for lack of a better term, it hits different. And it's kind of also helped me realize the things I need to be grateful for. Because like I think Masters of the Air came out in like 2007. Like, it's a super old book. But yeah, so I read that. That's been super huge. What else did I? Damn it! I should have been more prepared for this stuff.
Well, to be fair, we didn't give you any preparation. We just throw this on you.
Yeah. Classic Felix. I think the whole show's been like full of great recommendations.
Yeah, no, I think you're off the hook. You've done your job.
Yeah.
There's,
Well,
there's
I can write some other stuff out and send it to you later if you want. If you need me, like a list or some sort of thing that you guys like share or whatever.
This is a pretty casual recommendation.
Okay.
Well, we'll link up everything, the podcasts, your Instagram. We'll have to drop a link to your Patreon as well, because I know that's a great way to support the great work. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. This cannot be the last time, because I don't think we've really scraped the surface of a lot of things. It's been an absolute treat. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely awesome.
All right, take care.
Well, Andy, I am giddy as a school-aged student, as they say. Thank you so much, Jeremy Kirkland. Of course, we'll link up all his things, including Blammo and his Instagram and whatever else he's up to in the notes. Who else do we have to say thank you to, Andy Green?
Well, aside from the listeners, we always appreciate you guys listening, subscribing, liking, telling everyone that you know. Obviously, emailing us, otthepodcast@gmail.com. And, we love the social media support, ot.podcast on Instagram. Give us a follow there.
Stories.
Yeah, tag us in your stories, tag us in your posts. We love engaging with the listeners.
Do you know what? Throw up your OT/Kirkland looks.
Yeah, Friday fits. And zoom in with a wrist shot. And always, thank you to Major Tom Media for putting this show together.
What a guy.
I think, Jason, we will see you all when we hear you all next time.